again. Thank you for joining us again this morning. And I'm going to turn it over to Haven Allen, who's going to be our moderator for panel today to do introductions.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's an absolute honor to be able to participate in the annual summit on regional competitiveness, specifically to have this important conversation around innovation in manufacturing and the effects that the pandemic has had. I'm joined here today with some of my friends between Chandra, Erica, and Niaz. But before we jump in, just want to talk a little bit about manufacturing, right, in the region. And our organization, mHUB, which I've been helping build for the last 5 years, was part of an overall ecosystem that was looking to create and reduce barriers of entry so that more people could foster and prosper in this manufacturing ecosystem. Our specific industry, our specific entity, focuses on the startup activity and supporting teams in advanced manufacturing, medical devices, energy tech, but all making new physical products that lead to the creation of new manufacturing businesses, but really leverage the resources that some of my peers here will talk a little bit about today. But our goal at the end of the day is to launch new businesses, and we've done so by creating a place-based asset in Chicago where people have access to capital-intensive equipment. They have access to networks of mentors, manufacturing suppliers, educators, and investors, and a community that's now embraced them and helped launch over 450 businesses over the last 5 years. Those teams have gone on to raise $895 million in venture capital. They've generated $430 million in revenue, and they've created 2,100 jobs. And as well as, in the last year alone, we've spent over $30 million with the local manufacturing supply chain. That's an area where we're starting to invest more and more in to make sure as we create that we're also making here in the Midwest region. And then, the last piece that we've really been focusing on is removing financial barriers of entry for early stage startups. And we sort of hit that from two sides. One, providing supplemental income opportunities via short-term R&D work. So, with 285 startups in the space at mHUB, we have an engineering talent pool of about 400 engineers. And those engineers are partnered up with industry for short-term R&D work. And then on the other side, we've launched a venture capital fund. So we're not afraid of the hard, everyone out there says hardware's hard and manufacturing's hard. They just don't get it. And they don't understand the resources and the network that's been built here in the Midwest. Like, this is a place where we can thrive. This is a place where we can really foster the development of the next wave of manufacturing. With that, one of my friends, Chandra Brown, is leading sort of the future of manufacturing as far as I'm concerned, and her work at MxD, and love for you to share a little bit about your work and what you all are doing.
Thank you, Haven. So good to see you. Honored to be on this panel. Thanks to Mark for that great intro. I am so happy to be here. Normally, this is the interactive portion of my thing because I ask everyone who actually knows what a Manufacturing Innovation Institute is. And I say, raise your hand. And normally, not that many people have raised their hands. I am here to tell you all you have an incredible resource right here in Chicago. We are one of 16 national manufacturing institutes. And there's a group of us that are funded predominantly by the U.S. Department of Defense, although we get a variety of government money. But let me start by saying, you see MxD, what does that even stand for? That stands for Manufacturing Times Digital, right? And where we are is where innovative manufacturers kind of go to forge their future as we look at a digital and advanced manufacturing path for this region. So really what we're doing is we're equipping factories, US factories, with digital tools, cybersecurity, and workforce expertise that they need to build really every part better than the last. So we have over 300 members. We have over 40 academic institutions, obviously most of the ones in the region here, lots and lots, hundreds of small businesses, and of course, big, large manufacturers too. So we are a true nonprofit public-private partnership. Sole goal, we are here to help US manufacturing companies be able to grow and prosper in really what's an increasingly competitive global environment, right? So we are also the DoD National Center for Cybersecurity in Manufacturing, as designated by DoD. So we do also spend a lot of time with that. I think my favorite, there's some quick facts here, but my favorite fact is we've invested over $120 million just in the last few years in over 85 projects. So our members come, an academic, a small business, a big business, they come together. And these are topics like future factories, digital twin, resilient supply chain. We were doing that before the pandemic, made that even more critical as we talk about supply chain issues. Operational technology, workforce, of course, is absolutely critical. You can have all the technology in the world, but if you don't have the people to operate them, then obviously we know that's a big issue. So while our mission is national, we actually obviously do the majority of our work in the region. So that's really nice. Let me go to the next slide and I'll tell you where we invest and what we do. So we have a great 22,000 square foot future factory. You can see behind me that you can come visit. We actually open to the public every now and then, at least usually once a month. And you can come see what the future of manufacturing will look like, particularly from this digital and cyber revolution. So we do research, development, and demonstration. I want to put that part in there because we like to demonstrate our project as much as possible on our future factory floor. And we have these teams, right? And projects come, they're supported by government funds. We put money out there. And again, it's everything. If you look on our floor, you'll see World War II equipment, right? All the way up until the most advanced, additive subtractive machines. So we really need to cover the gamut of what is actually out there in the United States. We're also investing, as we said, with the National Center for Cybersecurity in really the training and the tools that manufacturers need to improve cyber resiliency. And this is my call to action. I think everybody knows this. Hopefully people know this, 35%, the majority of all cyber espionage attacks are targeted at the manufacturing sector. Highest of any. People think it's financial. People think it's actually manufacturers that are probably the greatest risk and the highest targets. They're stealing data, design IP, disrupting operations. I mean, it's fatal to a company. Finally, I think we're going to talk a lot, I know, about workforce here, and I know you heard yesterday's speakers, great stuff that they were talking about. We have to prepare this workforce. And I know Eric and her team does some great work on this area. We are very focused on the future jobs, the digital and the cyber skills needed. There's huge pipeline issues currently. I used to be a metal manufacturer, couldn't find my welders and fitters. Now I'm worried about the looming pipeline from a cyber and a digital standpoint. Finally, just to be brief, the last thing I'll say is there's lots of ways to engage. We are here, this great asset right in your backyard. Love to give people visits, tours. If you're a manufacturer, come be a member. We have virtual tours online. We do them all over the country. We have cyber road shows that we take out. And we have a lot of really great free, again, original research, particularly on the workforce area with digital taxonomies, for example, and cybersecurity hiring guides. So again, we have a ton of RFQs, we have money out there, and it's really great to be here and part of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Chandra. Amazing partner, amazing asset. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Niaz Latif from Purdue University Northwest to provide a little insight about the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm very fortunate to talk about Purdue Northwest's role in terms of economic development and workforce development in the greater Chicagoland area. So Purdue University Northwest in Hammond, Indiana is essentially involved in three areas: the education, research, and workforce development pertaining to manufacturing. That's one of the focus. Part of the reason is that the Chancellor Keon has established the position Purdue Northwest to be the most engaged institution in this region. So in this regard, what we have done, we have developed the advanced manufacturing related program, like BS degree in mechatronics engineering technology, first in the country. Then we also established 2 centers, Commercialization and Manufacturing Excellence Center and David Roberts Center for Innovation and Design. These are placed off campus right on the highway right here, so that it's more visible, so that it invites individuals who are innovative and wants to come up with a product that can be commercialized. So our objective from Purdue Northwest is that to provide opportunity to the individuals who did not have, but have the intellectual ideas and innovative ideas that can be commercialized. That was our focus. At the same time, we do have the resource that we leverage for the research in the advanced manufacturing as well. For that reason, we also have Center for Innovation, Visualization, and Simulation that helps the industry also to become innovative, to develop innovative process and so on. So what the role of the Commercialization Manufacturing Excellence Center? What we do is that anyone can walk into the door and meet with our entrepreneur in residence, talk about their idea. Then they go through 3, 4, 5-step process to see whether what their idea is commercially feasible or not. So that they can do that. In the event that we feel like that, yes, it is feasible, then we provide them all kinds of supports. We do have the advanced manufacturing facility, training facility. Our main goal is to ideation to market program. So by doing that, by establishing some kind of credibility, we have been fortunate to get a US Department of Commerce grant. We call it C2C, concept to commercialization. So what we do is that any idea, good concept, go through the process and try to commercialize. And then in that manufacturing area, we also train people. So we want to make sure that people understand and learn that process so that they can be contribute in the workforce. So those are the things we're doing. We have been modestly successful. We actually launched companies. We launched products. We got through the CMAC, where individuals got utility patents. A lot of provisional patents have been approved. On top of that, we have been also fortunate to get millions of dollars of federal grant and some funding at the state level, as well as the private companies. We do focus on small to medium-sized companies right now. Part of the reason there is the need, most of the workforce. So we try to cater to their need right now. And by looking at this, we think that the scope, to increase the scope of this commercialization activities or innovative activities. So our chancellor's vision is to come up with an accelerator, what we call Impact Lab. So we are in the process of working on that so that it will provide more opportunities in different areas other than manufacturing also to meet the need to support the individuals for innovative ideas and commercialize their products. The other thing we also have, the facility, I would invite any one of you come to Northwest Indiana to visit our facility, because it's a very unique facility. We can actually provide pilot manufacturing opportunities to the individuals who wants to try out what would be the process itself and improve the process accordingly. On top of that, we also have David Roberts Center for Innovation and Design. The individual alumni of Purdue Northwest contributed and understand and put importance in the manufacturing, particularly advanced manufacturing nowadays. So what we do, the focus of that particular center is to support industry-sponsored design projects. So we partner with industry, they sponsor, so students, faculty, anyone have the opportunity to do real-life project, to solve real life problem. So it helps them to think critically. So I think it's mutually beneficial for industry as well as our students and faculty here. We also encourage our faculty members to do the research here, but the CMAC, all these facilities are really available to anyone. The CMAC, anyone in this region can walk in and seek the opportunity. And I think we did not have this kind of facility in Northwest Indiana. And this is something where people can reach out. And we say affectionately, it's a one-stop shopping. Come to us. will help you to do that. And I think the way we recorded our past performance, I think we are making a difference. And that is the goal of Purdue Northwest. We want to be the engaged university. We want to make sure that we are contributing to economic development in this region. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Latif. Next up, I'd like to introduce Erica Sweeney-Staley, Executive Director of Manufacturing Renaissance, to share a little bit about the work that you're doing. But, you know, Manufacturing Renaissance has been one of those organizations that have been driving the manufacturing agenda over the last 10 years. And it's been amazing to see their work and impact continue to grow.
Great. Thank you so much, Haven and Mark, for having me here. It's really an honor to be here today. So I'm here to recruit you all as much as we are meeting everything that my esteemed colleagues are talking about is absolutely essential. We need to have these investments in workforce, not only workforce development, but also innovation, supporting our manufacturers. But at Manufacturing Renaissance, we need to even think even bigger. And our mission is to advance sustainable development anchored in manufacturing. And we see this work as being part of not just creating and expanding great new programs, but really working towards a new paradigm of development in terms of how we think about community, economic, and sustainable development. We can go on to the next slide, please. And so, and this, it's important, I want to include this slide because this is the context of the work we're doing collectively, all of us, is that the business as usual for the last 40 years is not working. And we need new approaches to how we weave and create the economy that really truly lifts all boats, that really truly builds thriving communities, that implements scalable solutions to address the climate crisis while being able to systematically expand inclusion to low-income, Black, Brown, Latinx, Indigenous, people of color communities into the prosperity that we know is possible. So we in Manufacturing Renaissance this is the context of our work. It's, you know, beyond just, yes, of course, we want to help more young people get jobs and help companies, but for us, the prize is how do the current paradigm is failing, and we need a new paradigm, a new norm for what a community and economic development looks like. Next slide, please. So in from our point of view, the work at hand really requires expanding the domain of what we consider innovation to include many more stakeholders in this sort of what we're using a lot around this idea of manufacturing ecosystem. I know the print is really small on the slide, but for example, traditionally, when we talk about innovation, it usually only pertains to the center circle, which is really what happens at the firm level, the company, their use of technologies and how they engage with their suppliers and customers and clients and so on. What we're advocating for is that innovation to actually be a solution to some of these problems that I alluded to earlier, that we see evidence of decline every single day, is that we absolutely and manufacturing provides a really unique, timely, strategic opportunity. We should be working attached to the hips with our public schools, engaging our youth. And in addition to the workforce development partners, we need to even be looking even broader into the social services agencies, the community. There is a diversity of community advocates, from faith leaders to environmental advocates to policymakers who don't know anything about manufacturing, who need to know something about manufacturing. They need to be part of amplifying the message of what's possible, and they have something to contribute to sort of this innovation landscape. And then of course, broadly the public at large. And in that if we do this right, manufacturing really becomes synonymous with sustainable development. You know, so regardless of whether you're talking about cyber tech or green tech or expanding the public transit systems and, you know, the energy grid, that manufacturing absolutely, as we all know, is essential to that. And if we also want to make sure that the people who have most to gain from access to these jobs, ownership opportunities, we need to be much more intentional about the partnerships and collaborations, and really, and so that innovation really works for the majority of us. Next slide. And so this is just a snapshot of Manufacturing Renaissance's footprint at the time. We have what we call, our little piece, we're a small agency, but we're building these programmatic prototypes is how we think of them. That yes, we're working with youth, in-school youth and young adults through our Young Manufacturers Association, providing training and other coaching. We're also, we are trying to inform policy and being at the table as much as possible to represent the opportunity and interest of how manufacturing can be used as a strategic tool for inclusion. And then of course, inclusion also represents how do we work with existing companies who might be struggling and at risk of closing because of lack of a successor. That is a huge issue and a timely issue that we're actively trying to engage. Next slide. So just quickly, a little bit about what is on hand, on deck, and a quick way to support the work. We are working with a mix of regional partners through our Chicagoland Manufacturing Renaissance Council. So action number one, I encourage all of you to join as a CMRC member. We are trying to create a big tent. So whether you are a teacher, a high school counselor, a manufacturing company, a workforce development entity, a faith leader, a youth advocate leader, we need your voice at our table. We need you to help us amplify this message of what these opportunities represent for our communities, and that we want our schools to have these kinds of training programs. We want our local entrepreneurship resources to be incorporating manufacturing opportunities, in addition to, it's for every $100 million of investment in R&D and technical development, we want $100 million in investment in the schools, in the public school infrastructure, social services, such that as many people can participate in what we know is possible in the prosperity that manufacturing represents. So join the CMRC. Second, we actually have an event, actually literally just today, the event has been rescheduled with the Deputy Secretary of Commerce, Don Graves, for a week from the 27th. Hopefully some of you have already registered. I'll be sending an update shortly, but that's an event. We're excited to have Deputy Secretary Graves, Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle, and others really talk about this idea around how manufacturing can be a strategic vehicle for expanding inclusion and development. And then finally, quickly, we have been involved with a national coalition of folks a bill has been introduced by Jan Schakowsky, Manufacturing Reinvestment Corporation Act. Of course, there's a lot of drama in Washington right now, but this is a bill we're actively looking for endorsement for, because what it would do is invest $20 billion in creating similar Renaissance councils in cities across the country that will be part of helping to integrate manufacturing into practical solutions that can drive community economic development in areas across the country. So we're actively looking for endorsements for this. That is a mouthful for plenty, and there's lots of other ways to get involved. Hopefully I can connect with some of you after this, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Erica. Well, let's get into the conversation here. Obviously, we're living in disruptive times, and at the time of the summit today, we're starting to see a recovery take shape. But let's take a look back at the last 18 months. How do you all feel as though the pandemic has shaped the manufacturing industry? And just speak broadly, from workforce to supply chains, et cetera. I'll start with you, Erica.
So what we're seeing on the ground is, the pandemic has been quite a moving target for us in terms of, because from our point of view, we're trying to get young people into, the good news is the companies that we work with have been hiring through the pandemic. However, we are, there's still a struggle of, providing access to these kinds of work opportunities. Young people are still largely in the dark about what these opportunities represent. So on one hand, that remains a real challenge, and there's much more that can be done at the school level as well as in the community level to essentially just get the word out and provide numerous opportunities for young people to opt in, to even have an opportunity to access these jobs. And then from the employer's point of view, we are, we know there's this crisis and unemployment on one side, but yet there's still many jobs are going unfilled. And a lot of companies we interface with are really struggling in that talent piece. So we've been actively working with the county and other resources to how to help support companies in being more pivoting and adapting, improving how they do their on-the-job training. So we've been supporting both sort of the, how do we build a broader, more responding talent referral network, as well as helping companies make best use of the talent we're able to bring to their door. So the pandemic definitely exacerbated a lot of that, but it also kind of further affirmed that this is really continues to be high priority work moving forward.
Definitely want to dig in more on the workforce side, but let's jump. Chandra and Dr. Latif, any additional insights that you can provide on the impact and how the pandemic is shaping the future of manufacturing?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here too. I would say I appreciate Eric for talking about the workforce side. I guess I would say that I want to talk about the supply chain, and actually I'm really proud. Like when we talk about the pandemic, what's been happening in the last years in the manufacturing community, how quickly we forget how manufacturers came together, how we found our PPE, how we donated, how Haven, your folks at mHUB, we at MxD made local face shields and masks and things that we were sending out to the local hospitals and community here. We came together during the pandemic to help this country. And I think it's really great too to see how people are understanding who talked about supply chain. Maybe this group of us talk about it all the time, but the reality is the common person on the street was not talking about supply chain until they can't get toilet paper. Funnily enough, then supply chain becomes a real issue to them, right? So I would say that, we believe one thing is we became more critical and more important, the work that we're doing during the pandemic. I mean, digitalization, going remote, if you're going to advance on the manufacturing space, you better be paying attention to some of these things. Those are going to make winners and losers as we go forward. So I think that, supply chain, how we buy our materials, how they're shipped, again, great competitive advantage for the Midwest in terms of when we talk about logistics and shipping and local. I know we're probably going to get into that. But the reality is, I think the pandemic has fundamentally changed. In some sense, I'm happy about. Public is paying greater attention to manufacturing as an economic development tool, as affecting their day-to-day lives, as they should, because we've always been here doing that, but I think it's brought it to life. And I'm really proud how manufacturers came together over the past year and a half to really help this country. So that would be my overarching kind of talk about the pandemic.
I will echo what Chandra just said. The pandemic actually made us think the way we did business before. So for example, from our Purdue Northwest, we realized that we found that there's a unpredictability of the workers. You cannot get the workers during that time where you need the physical presence of the workers. So we submitted a proposal to Economic Development Authority and we were funded. What we're essentially doing, we're using this off-the-shelf gaming technology, robotics, and the Wi-Fi technology to operate a horticulture farm, a small horticulture farm. So we're going to demonstrate the pilot how we can do that. So that allowed us, because we think that when there is a situation like the pandemic, when you don't have the worker, how do you help? And how can you make that kind of help, make it cost effective yet functional? So we are trying that pilot. And I also say that when the pandemic came, that even every unit, whether it's the manufacturing companies or the institutions, we came up with the product face shield for the healthcare worker. And it helped us that we have a nursing program, so we know what are the requirement, and we have an engineering and technology program and the prototyping facility. So we came up with those solutions. So I think any kind of situation, pandemic or any kind of unavoidable situation, allows us to think and become innovative and come up with a solution to deal with those situations.
Right. Well, let's dig in on the innovation that you're seeing coming down the pipeline. And maybe I'll start with you, Chandra. Where is manufacturing innovation going, and what should the people on this call be excited about, aware of, and be prepared for?
Wow, that is such a huge question, Haven. Seriously, There's so much innovation happening in this space. I'll touch on maybe just some bigger themes, including the start of the most important thing I think we can tell everyone when we talk about the Industry 4.0 and the revolution is that we are in a revolution. So the speed of change and what's happening. So the innovations today might not be the innovations weeks from now or days from now. Like it's the whole cycle has really shortened in terms of what we're doing. So that's one thing I would lay as a basis. In terms of actual innovations, I mean, there's so much incredible stuff happening and we're just beginning to really get into, and again, some manufacturers are a lot more advanced than others, but let's talk the small and medium size that aren't on, the use of digital twins, talk about sustainability, talk about safety. How are you building things and doing it before you're actually putting it on the floor? That's a huge, trend that's getting, I think, bigger. We still haven't talked as much about artificial reality, virtual reality, how we're using that as a training tool, for example, to get tribal knowledge from our best, let's say, welders and putting it in a training format where you can train around the world at the same time, right? In realistic conditions. At MxD, we have a variety of test beds. So like the workplaces of the future with no paper, nothing is paper, digitally projected work instructions, right? We also show things like, I'm really excited about 5G. So again, people with their phones may think 5G has been around for a while. In the manufacturing space and what the low latency and the speeds are going to do with equipment, absolutely, I think most people have not even really thought through the edge computing, the 5G side. So we have a 5G test bed where people are gonna be able to come in and actually build things out, right? And see how does 5G enhance your productivity and your efficiency. So, I mean, I just gave you 3 like really simple kind of examples out there. There is so many innovations, especially with the pandemic, when you go into healthcare and everything that we're doing remote, there's so much happening. It's a super exciting time. So that's why I encourage people like come into it. It's amazing. Generative design, what we're doing is we design parts that a human mind could never design. But now you can design it in seconds, right? A brand new, you guys do a 3D printed part coming out. So I think those are really critical and some great exciting things coming.
Absolutely. I mean, all those innovations you're talking about are creating so many opportunities for early stage startups to create products that we wouldn't have thought about or would have been so expensive to create and put onto the market that there wouldn't have been a willingness to pay or a customer out there. Erica, talk to me a little bit about innovation and workforce development. We're hearing a lot about not being able to find workers, and it's impacting Illinois, it's impacting the US, and manufacturing has been one of those bright stars throughout our pandemic, but we're hitting some walls with workforce. Talk to me about how the system is preparing to train those workers of the future.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, and I think we're still in the process of, as a system, diagnosing the problem, frankly. Like for example, there's this huge gap between of what's happening again at the firm level and for example, teachers, we need a radical new way of training teachers to be more engaged facilitators so whatever is happening at the firm level, there should be we need to develop mechanisms such that teachers can get training on the latest technologies and help to be involved in developing project-based learning opportunities for their students in the nearby high school. So if you have a company, the high schools that are in the 5-mile radius of that company should be have projects in the classroom that can help young people not just learn about the technologies and those careers, but that for me is a needed innovation that we're not even talking about. So anytime we are at the table with what the technology needs or opportunities are, we should be having the local schools at the table to think, okay, what's the other side of the coin of what can we be doing at the school level? And in terms of workforce development, we have to think more broadly, workforce, but also youth development. The young people, 99% of the young people I've ever worked with on the west side of Chicago barely knew what the word manufacturing was, much less the implications for a career. So before I can sign them up for my training program, I need to build trust. I need to cultivate multiple career exposure opportunities. And right now, there's not a real easy way to do that across the system. It's really, if you're a workforce development provider, you probably don't have the resources to just have open houses and community events and facility tours. Same with schools. There's not necessarily dedicated support to just make sure we're casting a broad net, that as we're getting people in our training program, we're planting seeds as we go. So that for me is, again, low-hanging fruit that I think could lead to really powerful of sort of return on investment in terms of how we do workforce development traditionally, and having much more customized programming depending on the audience. If most default sort of workforce development are assume that you have an adult who has had some work experience under their belt, they really know what they're getting out of the program. If you want to engage youth, we really have to kind of go back to the drawing board of how yes, the technical skills are there, but how are we engaging young people, not just in terms of pedagogically, culturally as well. So I think there are a variety of innovations that are needed to really build multiple opportunities for these other, and even social service agencies. Again, most do not know anything about manufacturing. So as they're serving, case managing their clients who may be coming out of the criminal justice system or maybe dealing with homelessness or other issues, we should be engaging those service providers to say, hey, there's a company nearby. How can we build some bridges so that this person, as they're getting their social service needs met, that we can also be systematically introducing them to these opportunities. So that's how we have to be thinking as a workforce development system, is much more outside of the actual training program, but what are all those connection points with all these other stakeholders in the community at large?
That's great. Dr. Latif, I mean, from an education standpoint, innovation, it sounds like Purdue has created so many new programs and resources. I mean, what are you all seeing from an innovative perspective?
So let's talk about, I will echo what Erika just mentioned. It is that customized training to meet a specific need. So we have been fortunate to get a large grant from US Department of Labor, and we train to the modular training more than 300 people. And it has a pathway program. So 28 of those participants actually pursuing college degree. And most of them actually passed US Department of Labor endorsed certification, and they are in the job market right now. So if the opportunities are there, things can be done. They come at different levels, so the training should be customized so that it can cater to that need. So that's one way. I think we are deeply involved in the workforce training. Part of the reason is that every grant we do, whether it is pertain to some innovative ideas, there's a training component there. Because if we come up with a new technology, we need to train people in that area. So that's our goal. All our proposals have that kind of improvement. The other thing to promote the innovation, there are certain things we follow. We have to provide opportunity for prototype development, which we have. We have to help them with the process design and pilot manufacturing that we provide. We have to also help them for customer discovery. Do you really have a market for your product that you're thinking of? Then they go through that, they understand. Then we help them with a small business development training. We help them to develop business model and also provide intellectual property legal aid because to protect their product, so to speak. And then we continuously help them with the innovation related job training. So we try to make sure that a person who wants to become an entrepreneur eventually will seek funding from the investors. We prepare them. There's actually pitching competition we have. They all have to even present 3 minutes video. Tell what you want to tell about your product, why it is a great thing that we would invest in that. So those kind of opportunity we try to provide in terms of innovation, but it is also significant component of us is the workforce training. For example, right now we partner with the agency in Greater Chicago area where the training is combined with the apprenticeship. So there's a commitment by the industry that they will provide that apprentice opportunity while they're going through the training. So I think this kind of business education partnership helps. It also allows to customize things, and it actually make it cost effective as well to provide this kind of training.
Great.
Hey, Haven, can I jump in on this question too?
Absolutely.
You know me, because I love this topic, and I really appreciate, I totally agree with what both Eric and Anna said, but when you talk about innovation in workforce too, specifically, I want to talk on the tech side as well. I mean, the pandemic has changed things. We know this, what's happening with the educational systems around. So for example, you know, we have a virtual training platform, right, where there's a variety of manufacturing and cyber classes that someone can go in and take. And one of the things I love when I look at it in a positive sense, it's kind of, as Eric said, it's about how are we increasing the diversity? Manufacturing is a huge number of unfulfilled jobs. We all know this. There's huge pipeline issues. We must reach out to other people. And so we have to meet them where they're at. And we have to make it exciting. A lot of that is, you know, remotely also and through other methods. So these virtual type of training centers, I think the use of, again, augmented and virtual reality is another great lure, especially when you're talking about younger generations. And, you know, finally, I would say, you know, one of the things we've done, again, kind of echoing what Erica said, is our digital taxonomies and things, you have to show people the paths. So like you can go for free on the website to download the hiring guide, download the digital taxonomy, talking about, there's jobs of the future. Like, do you want to be, manufacturers are going to maybe need things like digital ethicists. Who would ever even think that you're going to need that? But when you have so much data, or as sensors have gotten cheaper and what's changing, you know, in the environment, there's so much that's going to need to change, even on a workforce training, or again, using things without paper and being able to train, being able, when you're digitally, think about this, to change the language of any instruction instantaneously for whoever comes in. So they can be speaking one of 5,000 different languages, you know, in their native language, right? When you don't have to change out paper, you're not looking for instructions and guides in a book, right? It revolutionizes, honestly, like diversity and the other things that you can do from a workforce standpoint. So I think that is a really critical and hopefully positive for reaching out and doing the right things moving forward with the changing workforce and what we're doing to innovate in that space.
Haven, may I jump in for a second? I wanted to chat with you about my previous organization. We did a lot of work with the STEM pipeline, and I think advanced manufacturing, those are STEM careers. You're operating machines driven by computers. And we had done a program specifically to help address the pipeline issues in automobile manufacturing in Kentucky, with the state of Kentucky and with consortium of educators all the way from literally grade school through post-secondary. And there was this consortium of manufacturers, the state education people who were doing specific training in the community and high schools about ensuring that the curriculum was linked, so that when you got kind of turned on, as Erica was saying, in high school, by having the correct approach to people, that there was a path to other things, that we're able, instead of going for a degree, if you wanted a certification, there was a path that led you directly to a job. And it was hugely successful. You know, at the time, they were the second largest auto manufacturer because of that program. Do you know of anything like that in this region? That kind of is our region, although they're south from us, but do you know anything like that in this region? And then afterwards, I do have an audience question I'd love to give to you.
Well, I'll jump in for sure. So we made a really good faith effort actually to do that very thing. That was exactly the work Manufacturing Renaissance was involved in, partnering with Chicago Public Schools, starting back in 2008. Actually, was exactly before, you know, career pathways language became really commonplace. We, based on research that we had done, we saw the opportunity in manufacturing and recognized that schools, high schools in particular, really can and should be ground zero for not just training the next generation, but inspiring the next generation of leaders in all aspects of advanced manufacturing. And so the work through what became Austin Polytech on the west side of Chicago was exactly that same partnership. We were, as a result of that work, Austin Polytech was the first high school in the city to have both engineering and manufacturing coursework under the same roof. It was the first school in the city to have a dual credit manufacturing technology course with Daly College. And actually, that program, the only students who earned college credit at Austin Polytech for a few years there was through the manufacturing program. We're very proud of that, and that led to job placements for high school students who are graduating. Now, unfortunately, we never got above, you know, to the level of institutional support that was needed. You know, we had, you know, in 10 years, we had 8 different principals and probably the same amount of different, you know, chiefs of schools and all the turnover in between. And ultimately, we're no longer embedding the school, but that was something that we're very proud of with the program, and we're eager to have those conversations again with the school system to continue to create those kinds of partnerships with schools really at the center, as opposed to an afterthought, which sometimes happens in the economic development space. So, and there's great examples across the country. I mean, so in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of work to varying degrees of success, because these are complicated partnerships, in political dynamic landscapes over time. And that's part of, again, the innovation is required is in this institutional innovation. And frankly, that needs to be invested in intentionally and proactively. It's not going to happen spontaneously. You need to sort of, how do public-private partnerships work together to ensure these stakeholders remain, not just get to the table, but remain at the table, not just for a couple of years, but over decades, to ensure that these schools continue to keep pace with the needs of industry and vice versa. And the industry has the opportunity to keep pace with the needs of the community.
And there's also been some good programs to create opportunities for students to go from high school to community colleges and get directly into local universities. I mean, you look at the College to Careers program. If you have a B average at CPS, you get right into city colleges. You maintain that B average, it's full tuition. You can take your credentials that you earn at, say, Daly College in manufacturing, go get a job right away, or you keep your B average, you can go right to UIC, get right into an engineering program. So there's on and off ramps that are being created, definitely more opportunity to engage more people. Before I fell off, I wanted to ask a question. Part of the workforce issues that I see, supply issues, is the lack of diversity in manufacturing. And we have underrepresentation of women, we have underrepresentation of underrepresented groups, and to truly solve this workforce issue, we have to attract more people and bring and create those career opportunities. Erica, I mean, Dr. Latif, Chandra, how do we bring more women? How do we bring more underrepresented groups into manufacturing?
You raised a question which is so critical. Two reasons here. First of all, the employers, even they have this opening, they're not finding the people, right? Now they realize that they're not finding the people who are ready to work for them. So what they're going right now is that they're try to bring anyone who they can get and train them to meet their need, right? To do that, there must be, as you said, pathway or seamless transition from high school to two-year college to the four-year college, right? So more and more institutes, including Purdue Northwest, we are now reaching out to the high schools, so that to the outreach program to encourage them the STEM. We are somewhat fortunate, and we have the opportunity that many regions may not have. It's a very diverse population in Northwest Indiana. So we focused on reaching out to these high schools where we can actually attract students, bring them on campus, have some kind of understanding how the college environment is, how the academic environment is, so that they are not afraid to come in. We also deal with issue where the first generation college student we deal with all the time, and many of them need additional help because they look at the college cost is a sticker shock, right? But they may not know that there are a lot of opportunities because the university works with individuals who are not able to pay for college, but they come up with some package. So, but there's no awareness for that. We have to somehow reach out to them and help them understand that. To answer your question, we really have no choice but to reach out to schools, high school, middle school, and prepare them so that they become the future workforce and interested in this advanced manufacturing. We have been talking about advanced manufacturing, about robotics and all those things in last few years. Now the new terminology can cyber physical system. So they not only need to know the technical aspect of it, they need to know other things also, because it's all integrated system, right? So this is a challenge. And I think as a Purdue Northwest, we're trying to increase the diversity of this future workforce pool. And we have no choice but to partner with the business and become integral partners so that they value those things and allow these students go to their facility to see in action what's happening there. And we are working on it.
Erica, Chandra.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of to add or nodding head for that. So what we found in our experience working on the west side of Chicago was, because we were working very much, I think 100% of our youth were Black and pretty much Black, and a couple of Latinos in our population. And actually at the high school level, we actually had mostly young women who were participants in our program. But what we found is, as a result of having this great program at the high school, getting the job became sort of the easiest variable in this. What we found over time, it was keeping the job became the real strategy, because we're talking about, so they have the credential, they graduate in high school with a credential, and they have the skills, and we checked all the boxes of what the company said they needed and were looking for. But yet when, and this is not to blame companies in particular, but what we did find, especially a lot of these smaller companies, once our young person started working there really wasn't the internal supports. We know they no longer saw us every day. They now had to create new relationships with people who might have been maybe who looked different than they did, who were much older than they were. And frankly, we had too many stories of, both Black and brown and young women essentially getting lost in the shuffle, where and that's again, back to the importance of innovation of like, yes, we need to find a new way of supporting not just our schools, but also our companies, of what happens to that young hire in that, how do we make sure they stay integrated and engaged? And because guess what? Our kids do experience racism on the job. They are experiencing sexism on the job. And if you're an 18-year-old and you don't yet have the life experience of how to really manage that, a lot of our kids would sooner quit than to try and troubleshoot what's wrong. So that's why we created the Young Manufacturers Association, to provide peer support for those placements. So once those young people got the job, that just became the beginning of the next chapter of how we supported, so that we could help them navigate these challenging dynamic environments. And then once they get established, they make it easier for the ones coming after them. So that's where, again, those partnerships over time are so essential. So yes, you need the training program, you need the schools there, but then what happens to that 18-year-old who starts their new day on the job, and making sure that they don't feel excluded or pushed out because of challenging work situations? And how can we work with companies, workshops, or technical assistance that helps them? Like, how do you get young people excited to work for you? And even, because they're going to come to you with the credential, or so how do we make them want to stay, and not just say, oh, it's easier to work at Amazon or easier to work at, Walmart, whatever. We want these young people to want these jobs. And so we need to continue the supports beyond the job placement.
Chandra, anything you would like to add here?
Oh yeah, this is so great, because when you back cleanup, I can be like, yep, check, agree. I'll try to find some different take on it, right? So, and I totally agree with everything that was just said. And I really appreciate, honestly, Haven, you for bringing this up, because I personally think it's one of the greatest challenges that we are going to have. It isn't about the technology. It is about, there is a huge pipeline issue. Like I said, it's what keeps me up at night. We do not have the trained cybersecurity, the trained digital, the trained basics of manufacturing. This country will not succeed unless we fix that. And that is going to take, honestly, an entire country effort. It is not just regional. This is something that we have to tackle as the United States as a whole. However, that being said, I look at my past, and I'll tell you two very practical things I think haven't been said that I think are really critical as we talk about how do we address the lack of diversity, your question. One, look at my personal experience being a CEO, or 20 years ago, I've definitely usually been the only woman CEO, the only woman in manufacturing. And I would not have got there without allies, as kind of Erica was saying. So the men that surrounded me and promoted me, there was no women. There was no, minority diversity when I was, first starting out and in the manufacturing space. So I was reliant on others to help me and to help go up. So that's one. So this affects everyone who's listening. If you are in a privileged position, like, use that to help, because we don't always have us. Second, so that's one, and that's a role that everyone can play and help uplift others and introduce them to manufacturing as a career choice, and that we welcome and want diversity. The other is, kind of again, to Eric's point, you have to lead by example too, and you have to show it, not just for the recruiting, but also for the sustaining, as she was saying, the retention of your workers. So I have to say, I'm incredibly proud of MxD. They said at these national manufacturing institutes, it'd be very difficult. We put the pictures, for example, of our team and our board on our website. Go look and count up how many women are on my board, right? Over 50%. It is absolutely doable from a board level all the way on down to the people that are on your floor. So we have a huge commitment to that. We are, pretty well known. We're going to lead by example. So we're going to show people that you can have this diversity and you can have, the incredible successes. And I will also just do my one other favorite statistic, because this wasn't touched on earlier, is that, when you look at, they've done studies on, the Fortune 500 companies, and the one with the greater diversity from the upper management all the way on down have a higher return. So, I mean, even if you care about the funding of your businesses, whether this is manufacturing or finance, you should be caring about the diversity from the top all the way through and driving it to what's actually happening on your floor. So those are just kind of the different slants that I would add to this conversation, that I think it's absolutely critical. We will not succeed if we do not diversify the manufacturing workforce space, period.
Absolutely. When you look at the studies right now that Deloitte's putting out, they sort of suspect that there's going to be 2 million open jobs by 2030 in the manufacturing industry. And to solve this, and especially what we all know, the investments that's starting to be pushed into the manufacturing industry, which could only exacerbate the problem even further. Mark, I know you had a question from the audience that you wanted to jump to. You want to go there, and then we can jump back in.
Sure. Thank you for that. This is from one of our audience members. Any promising practices you see in innovation in innovating in the any promising practices you see innovating the sustainability of the local food system? It's a little off of your engineering top or your manufacturing topic, but a lot of food goes through like a manufacturing process was its processed. So, but do you know anything of that in that realm?
I mean, I'm happy to jump in here. mHUB, we have a lot of ag tech related businesses, but there's one that's really exciting right now, and it's a company called Sabanto. And Sabanto has created artificial or autonomous vehicle farming. So everything from seeding to harvesting. Specifically right now, they're in soy fields, but that was a technology that was fully developed here. They're trying to remove the capital intensity for small farmers who have to buy hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment just to be able to seed and harvest their fields, and have sort of an Uber model where you can rent these machines for a day. You literally define where it's sowing and have it plant, have it monitor, and then at the end of the season come and harvest. And the yields that they're producing are incredible compared to the traditional tractor that currently exists. And we're starting to see that not just with startups, but with big ag is also looking at the role autonomous farming can have in creating greater yields on our land. We have another company that focuses on making sure as we bring grain and store it, that it is protecting it and ensuring that there's no mildew or moisture that is produced while it's inside of a grain silo, and it's controlling these whole systems. So again, making sure not only are we creating more food, but then ensuring that we're not having the waste within the food system that is so prevalent.
Yeah, I can add in here too, Mark. I totally agree with, Haven. There's so much happening in the ag tech space, and just think about it. It's about data. So the more data, the more sensors you gather, the more sustainable, you're going to be. Like what products, when should you harvest? Tractors, right, that are going down the most specific ways, that's conserving the most amount of energy, the John Deere and the Caterpillar work. Everything onto how are you logistically transporting it exactly in its, kind of peak of perfection and delivering it faster to those who need it. How are you minimizing waste? There's so much you can do with low cost sensors, honestly, across the board in these facilities. So I think there's a lot of hope for the food sustainability, and that we're going to be improving that, across the board.
I'll share one information I just got the other day. At South Dakota State University, they started a program called Precision Agriculture, and to improve these things. So those who are interested, I would ask them to go there, and it's a new program and a good enrollment, but they are dealing with this kind of issues, efficiency of the agricultural production.
Thank you for that. And just for our viewers, And a lot of the information that we're hearing today from our panelists, you'll see in the chat that we're putting up websites and web connections to each of these people's organizations so that you can go specifically and find later on the topics we're talking about. Back to you.
The other thing I would just add here is, we talk a lot with industry and their focus on food production. And right now there's a massive investment going on in decarbonization of the supply chain. Everything from the way, we are getting the raw inputs to the way we're producing, packaging, delivering the food. And we're going to see a huge wave of innovation coming out of there as, large corporations are hiring chief sustainability officers. They're creating clearly definable goals to reduce and remove carbon out of their processes. Kind of on this, let's jump back into supply chain, right? What are some of the challenges that you all are thinking that are here to stay for the foreseeable future? But also, talk about a little bit about the opportunities and specifically what we're seeing globally with the realignment of supply chains that's happening right now. Now, Dr. Latif, why don't you kick us off here?
I cannot speak for globally, but I see one thing. It's a very big concern right now. There are jobs, but we don't find people to work, right? So that's one of the biggest challenges. And then the next challenge is that, yes, if we find the people who are willing to work but not trained. So how do we meet the need of these individuals industry? So I'll give you one example. One of the large companies in Michigan reached out to us just last month, finding about our modular training. They say that we can't find anyone. So whoever we get, we want to hire them, of course, work with them. Other issues, non-technical, like, how you work as a team, in terms of making commitment, being punctual, those are the things, and working with other people. Those will be addressed separately. But in the technical areas, can we train these people? Maybe high school graduates, didn't have any technical background. Where do we start? So there's several levels, with the hope that they will create an environment. Once they have these people, they will stay with them. So if the large companies are facing such problem, think about all the small to medium-sized companies around us. There are hundreds of companies around in Greater Chicago, and what's happening to them? Where would they get? I mean, the other issue is that the other day I was driving by, I say that, McDonald's paying $15 an hour. And so where is the competition? Where we need to address all these issues? As academics, our job is to train individuals in the advanced technology things. But this is, as Erica said, that there are other things than technology. It's a societal issue, diversity issue, making job attractive to the people, and making people working in an environment feel comfortable. So it's not addressing the global level supply chain, I understand, but we have problem right here, right now, that has to be addressed immediately. And that is our biggest concern right now. I'll give you an example. We deal with lots of construction companies around here in Northwest Indiana. Guess what? They have job openings. They cannot find people to work. And they are loaded with the work right now. And just think about it, when this infrastructure bill gets passed, what would happen, all this project has to be addressed, right? So I don't have the solution, but I can see what the concern is, and we'll try to do as best as we can from the academic point of view to deal with this situation.
David, I can jump in on the innovation side and supply chain if you want. Again, a different perspective in that I think the supply chain issue, there's a variety of big things that are happening. And even when you say globally, I'll try to speak to that, at least nationally. One thing that I think everyone is caring about is defining, like, the supply chain is really opaque, right? There's not, you don't know your tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 suppliers, right? So one of the things that we're looking at is supply chain mapping, right? And mapping out, where are the supply chains? What are the most critical items? We work a lot with DoD on critical issues. You look at the semiconductor issue that's happening right now. It's an absolutely critical thing. We have to have, for example, sometimes local sources, or trying to find what are the most critical things. And even the US government will be investing in some of these really critical supply chain areas. to keep everyone moving. So I think that's a big one. When you look at like, I think it was McKinsey who did a 2020 study. It was about aerospace manufacturers, and they were over 12,000, suppliers in like an individual supply chain. That's a huge amount, right? And so we have to understand them, understand the needs, understand how are we helping them. And we do a lot of projects. We put a lot of money into supply chain. We have this really awesome supply chain risk alert. It's a predictive analysis, taking data. And we spent I believe several millions of dollars on this, and we are in multiple phases on how you can predict your supply chain problem before it's happening, before it's hitting you, kind of related to the food sourcing issue we had. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But I think this is a very rapidly changing area. And I will also say, the other side of it is the cybersecurity side. I don't want to forget with supply chains, if you disrupt a supply chain, we've seen it, whether it be ships off of, California, whether it be going through the Suez Canal, whether it be things coming from China, if you disrupt a supply chain and your supply chain is not secure, the reason why Boeing and Lockheed and our large members care so much about supply chain too, and they want us to help their SMMs, is because that is your weak point, right? That is ultimately, they don't have the resources to be able to protect themselves, which leads vulnerability, up the whole chain, until you get to where we're potentially hurting a major military asset, for example. So I think supply chain is a really critical piece, and thank you for that question.
Yeah, and I'll just add.
Go ahead, Erica.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, from the grassroots community side looking up point of view, one thing that we've been piloting and really see the need, especially since the pandemic hit, of what we call the early morning network, which is what we've been working on with Cook County, because companies, especially these smaller companies that are sort of invisible but essential components of the overall supply chain, what we propose and is creating sort of a proactive outreach. And again, yes, data is an important component, but also it's tapping, labor organizations, the various service providers who are providing services to these companies. We're even trying to talk to faith leaders, like who's in your congregation who knows a company who might be in distress, and that these are often smaller firms. They may not yet know the question they need answering yet, but if we have a proactive and long-term approach, recognizing that, hey, we know you don't know who we are at this moment, but can we start having some conversations to say, hey, there are some resources that might allow you, whether it's financial assistance, maybe there are grants, local grants that might help, whether it's, improving your technical, your technical operations or your talent needs. Succession and ownership has come up a lot. I mean, we are talking to companies who, again, they haven't yet had the conversation with their own families of what am I going to do when I'm ready to retire? So through the early morning network, we want to have a proactive, ongoing outreach to these smaller companies who aren't necessarily at the point where they're looking for help, because we want to find them before that crisis hits, right? So that they really become integrated into the broader ecosystem of services and supports that we could refer them to, whether it's a MxD or mHUB or other or the county of who have resources that could be timely. But we need to create those relationships first. So that's something that we're also advocating, that this needs to not just be countywide but statewide, where that mechanism for engaging companies is and that for directly supports that delicate supply chain of those smaller companies who we need so much.
No, this is an area that mHUB's looking at a lot right now, because we support startups and they are generally operating in lower volumes. So when they get put in the queue, they have a lower level of priority. And it's crazy that we're getting, these emerging technologies finally get their big first purchase order, and then the parts and components that they need are back ordered 52 weeks. And we're looking a lot at like the role that the industry had with, transitioning from just in case sort of supply chain to just in time. The whole industry sort of went to just in time, and now we're seeing that failure as the supply chain ceased to operate, 18 months ago. A lot of manufacturers retooled to make things like mouses and cameras and more computers to accommodate our changing lifestyle, having to work at home. And you got groups like the auto industry that just ceased their production in March, April, May of last year, and an evolving industry that is transitioning to a more EV-oriented car and platform. And then just overall, just greater demand. And then you have weird things like, ice storms in Texas, you have oil pipelines shutting down, to wafers burning, 30,000 wafers burning, which is basically a year's worth of silicon wafers for producing parts and components. So there's just this perfect storm, and then you put in all the transportation issues that we're hitting right now. It's honestly not as much workforce issue. Workforce issue is there's more demand out there than possibly most of our manufacturers can fill, but it's the global issues and some of these natural disaster issues that are driving some of the supply chain.
Actually, the human issue plays a role in this supply chain also. Recently, we saw that there's a shortage of truck drivers, right? So that impacts the supply chain right there. So everything's tied to human resource at the end, So I think that is something we need to focus on also through partnership with different constituencies.
So let's be a little bit more positive and on a great note. What are we excited about manufacturing coming out of this? I mean, where are the real opportunities, not just the pain points and getting us to where this industry can continue to prosper?
I'm excited for, where there's crisis, there's also opportunity. And I think, legislation challenges aside, I think we're on the brink of a dramatic expansion of sort of the green tech industry, right? And I think this is a really exciting opportunity and convergence of multiple interests to really create a sort of a win-win scenario of, that manufacturing really gets centered as a critical part of the solution. And that, again, requires increased and much more highly prioritized investments in the surrounding education and workforce development infrastructure, because manufacturing is being recognized as the strategic vehicle for solving our energy infrastructure challenges, and whether it's clean water, and also too, this is an opportunity for manufacturers to also be on the part of the solution in terms of even more social issues, because as we want companies to expand, I think this is an opportunity for companies to be able to speak more directly to say, hey, we want to be sensitive to environmental justice issues. We don't want to just continue to, have disproportionate, we want to clean up our processes as we're advancing our technology. So I think this is a moment in time where I think if we approach it, we can really see a skyrocketing of the profile and prestige of our manufacturing sector again, but it'll be a much more diverse one, a much more inclusive one, and not just the companies will be thriving, but the communities surrounding them will be thriving. And so I think if we do this right, we can really enter a new era of the positive contributions to industrial development as a way to build communities. So this could be a really exciting time.
Midwest, such an amazing opportunity to lead in that climate and clean energy economy. Sorry, go ahead, Dr. Latif.
No, one encouraging thing I noticed is that these college kids, they want to be entrepreneurs. This trend of becoming an entrepreneur, becoming innovative and solve the problems, that is the trend among the college students right now. And how do we know? You'll be surprised. Many of we call clients in our commercialization and manufacturing excellence centers are students, seniors, juniors. They come with the ideas, they apply for patent, they want to be entrepreneurs. I think that will improve or thrive the innovative activities. I think that is a very positive I notice among the students right now.
I know we about 2 months ago had Senator Durbin out to mHUB to announce the U.S. Acceleration and Competition Act. This is a $250 billion investment in our manufacturing industry that was supported bipartisanly and has been passed in both now the House and the Senate. It's in reconciliation. They haven't really pushed it forward as they're solving some of these other issues. But when you look at what's in that, it's sort of a New Deal-esque type of investment in building our supply chain, our workforce development, our infrastructure. I know we're just absolutely jazzed about that. Erica, going back to the bill that you were talking about, there is so much investment, there is so much importance, and I think the pandemic shined a light on how important manufacturing was to all of our lives. I mean, talk a little bit more about that bill. And I don't know if you're aware of U.S. acceleration, but like how all these investments are going to stack up to growing the industry in the future.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, like we have a sense of humor about it at this point. I mean, we recognize there's a little sausage making happening right now in Washington. So, there are a variety of pathways forward for the substance of what the HR 5124 bill represents, which is the Manufacturing Reinvestment Corporation Act. But for us, one of the key components is recognizing that the solution requires these diverse stakeholders at the table. So yes, manufacturers, but also labor organizations, environmental organizations, community-based organizations at schools, that these are sort of the critical pillars of what the local applications for manufacturing related development and the related education training programs. So for us, that's a really exciting component, but also we're also talking about, what's exciting opportunity. On one hand, like for example, in the state of Illinois, unfortunately, most manufacturing companies are owned by white males. And aging white males at that. And so the opportunity this is an opportunity to develop and advance community wealth building strategies such that as these owners are ready to step down, can we build enough bridges to those companies such that either we get younger entrepreneurs of color who buy these companies to keep these companies open and innovating and growing and whatnot. And this is also opportunity for introducing employee ownership models to as a way to sustain these companies. So these are all sort of seeds that are kind of embedded in the bill that we're advocating of like, hey, this is an opportunity to bring a lot of fresh ideas to the table of how do we keep manufacturing thriving in these sort of regional footprints across the country. So yeah, so we're absolutely looking for endorsement as, like I said, depending on which way it goes forward, having a long list of companies as well as community-based organizations and other advocates endorsing the bill to say, yes, we want this as part of our agenda and wherever we are in the United States. And it's, again, a new approach to thinking about development from sort of a grassroots looking up as opposed to a top-down approach.
I got time for one more question. And, mHUB, we attract teams from all over the world and headquarter and build their business here in Chicago. And it's part of our long-term economic development strategy to attract teams here. And they come here because of our access to our talent, access to the supply chain. This is where their customers are. This is where the investment pool is starting to build. But, in a single 1, 2, 3 words, what do you think is the greatest strength for Illinois in manufacturing and the Midwest region? And I'll start with you, Erica.
You put me on the spot. The sky's the limit. I think we have all the right people at the table. Let's tap everybody's talent, make it happen.
Dr. Latif.
I think greatest talent, greatest resource we have in this region is that the partnership that is happening between the industry, business, institution, community, organization. I think that's the greatest start, and that's how things happen. Any initiative we take right now, there will be a positive result very soon. So it's more than three words, but I will tell you that it is indeed this kind of partnership, helps all kinds of growth and difference in people's lives and in the region.
All right, talent, partnership. Chandra, take us home here.
Oh, great. So Niaz took mine on the public-private partnership. This is when it's bad to go last, my friends, because those two took the top best ones. So let me try this out. What I'll say is, I think Chicago and this region was really made for Industry 4.0. I mean, we are the city of broad shoulders, right? I was born on the south side of Chicago. We have really hard, talented workers here. the higher education, but all the way down to the workforce. Like, we're proud of building things. We're proud of being the logistical center and having the railroads and airports and everything that makes Chicago unique. We are a city of doers, right? We want to make things work. So if I had to choose, I'd say that I think is one of the greatest strengths of this region, and excited to capitalize on that going forward.
Absolutely. I know we always talk about, like, we're both the creators and the makers here. And usually you don't have both of those together. You have intellectual property created somewhere and the product's made. This is the epicenter where these two things come together. And with that, I want to thank you all for participating. Mark, I'll kick it back to you to close this out. And,
Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, you're exactly on time. It was a great conversation. And just to kind of sum up, our Vice Chair, Greg Hummel, is known to say that Chicago was one of the big drivers in America when it became an economic powerhouse. And then of course, a lot of that power moved to the coast. But as we're looking after the pandemic, we're looking at specific global challenges. We were really poised in the Midwest to be that economic driver once again. And this conversation shows us kind of some of the tools that we've already got in place to get that going. So thank you very much for the great conversation. I appreciate your time and talents, and thank you for joining us.